This episode of Bright Hearth is brought to you by Founders Ministries, Live Oak Integrative Health, Grey Toad Tallow, Keep Wise Partners, Indigo Sundry Soap Company, Joe Garrissey with Backwards Planning Financial, and by our supporters at patreon.com. One of our favorite aspects of doing this show is getting to hear and interact with your questions about building and managing productive Christian households. Our podcast hosting platform recently added a convenient way to send questions and comments to us directly, which you can find in the episode description under the Send Us a Text link. Many episodes, we try to take up a question or two from the dozens that you send in every week, but let's be honest, sometimes we forget. So every once in a while, we do try to catch up with a dedicated Q&A episode, which is what we'll be doing in this week's show. We've got some good questions for you guys today, ranging from EMFs and Bluetooth headphones to pregnancy nutrition to dating to the marriage bed and more. And we hope our answers and discussion in what follows is helpful to you and yours. And now, on with Bright Hearth. Welcome back, babe. You're looking energetic this evening. Ready to go?
I look like this deflated yoga ball.
Lexi's like dejectedly leaning on a yoga ball that clearly has a hole in it. It looks like an old saggy
I'm
raisin.
Uncomfortable.
Why would you be uncomfortable? I don't understand.
Well, this is the first real day of this pregnancy that I'm like, I don't feel very comfortable. So that's a win for almost 32 weeks pregnant.
Yeah, pretty good. Pretty good run.
Sickies still, yeah. So I've been on my feet all day. But anyways.
Yeah, we've had
on with the questions.
Some people that are a little under the weather, that are down and out, looking dejected, looking sad, looking pitiful, leaking fluids from various parts of their face. And the best part is little Winifred. She has discovered the idea of saving kisses for me.
Wait, what does this have to do with sickness?
Just wait. She has discovered the idea of saving kisses for me when I leave for work or literally anytime. So she says, Daddy, I'm going to save some kisses for you when you get home. But she now has a cough.
Okay.
And so between each kiss, you get a little cough directly in the face.
I get it.
And I can't say no because she's so sweet. It's like, I guess I'm just going to...
Daddy has an album to finish. Don't get me sick.
Well, I finished all the vocals, so I think...
Oh, okay, good.
You know, it's all right. Yeah, I'm going to New York. Well, when this comes out, I'll have already gone, but I would like to not be hacking up along on the way to...
Oh, I see. That's true. I didn't think about that.
So retroactively, whoever we met there, whomever I met at the gala, the classical school gala, it was good to meet you. Okay, well, this episode, we've got a bunch of questions that we're going to be working through that people have sent in, mostly through our Send Us a Text platform, but also we did have some from Twitter. So we're going to jump into those. Are you ready? Do you have anything else that you'd like to let the people know?
Ask me the questions.
Okay. I'm going to start with one that is a little bit more general because one of them was directed more towards me. I'm going to start with one more that I think both of us can jump on here. They said, hi, new listener here and love the content. What would you recommend to a young woman who is dating and desiring and working towards marriage? What would we recommend to a young woman in the dating aspect of life and desiring and working towards marriage? Anything jump to the front of your mind first? I've got some thoughts, but let's send it over to the Pregnant Americans section.
I would say make sure with your desires, you're not like creating silly extra biblical categories that would disqualify a man because you don't know what a man is like.
Because you've never been married to one.
Yeah, so this one can be hard. I feel like a lady might think some hobby a man has is just totally not acceptable. And it's kind of like, well, have you ever been a man? Have you been married to a man? Do you know that some men, that's just, as long as it genuinely is not causing sin or he's not dedicating too much time and is scheduled to it, it's a freedom area that you have to be okay with. Your husband might not have the exact same hobbies you do, and that's okay. So, because I think a lot of women can discount that.
Yeah, I think you're right. They develop unrealistic, like hyper-specific things they're looking for that are, you know, actually they don't really know what they need a lot of times. And so they're like, well, I want him to be kind of like an artistic, or I want him to, he's into hunting and I don't like hunt. He can't be into that.
Yeah.
Or, oh man, he likes like big trucks, or he like tinkers with cars all the time, or something that you're like, well, that's a waste of time. He's not mature enough. Like really, if he were mature, he would only want to read theology books all the time.
Not true. It's just not true.
No, that's not how.
So I don't know what you would call that, but that would be my advice: is just make sure you're not being. And I think about Elizabeth Elliot's book, "Let Me Be a Woman." I think she tackles this pretty well. So maybe consider reading that book too.
Okay, yeah, it's a good resource. Recommend How to Be a Woman.
No,
or Let Me
Be a Woman.
Elizabeth Elliot. Yeah, I think what you're talking about is like understanding that it's good. It's okay to have preferences. In your, that's perfectly fine. We're not saying don't have preferences, but just be flexible that your preferences don't become the kind of thing that narrows down the total population of people on earth that you could marry to, like 3 people.
Yeah.
And 2 of them are already married and the other one is in Norway and you're never going to meet him. It's sometimes people can develop too specific of a preference. And so they start ruling people out for bad reasons. On the other hand, I would say, to a young woman in that situation, it's okay to have high standards where it counts.
Yes, that's a good way to put it.
Like not feeling guilty for having a high standard on something like, I'm not going to date or court a man who is into like pornography.
Yeah.
I'm not going to date or court a man who, and you could have standards on that front that are, I think, in terms of character, that are honestly healthy and wise, and that can be a good idea.
Yep.
Because marrying poorly is
a big deal,
a really big deal.
Yeah.
So having wise counsel involved, if you have a godly father, especially, I would encourage young women to remain under their father's roof until they are married, where possible, like where that can be prudently undertaken. And I think that you have a lot of protection there when you involve other authorities in both directions, because a good father can tell you, like, honey, you have a really too specific preference here. This guy that you're kind of rejecting because of some specific thing, give him a chance. Like, actually, he's a good man. Or, look, I know that this guy has charisma or whatever, but he doesn't have the virtue to back it up. It's protection.
Mm-hmm. He's got Riz. I think that's the word they use.
Is that what they say today?
Remember, that's what Sophie and Tasai taught me. I thought it meant a haircut, a specific haircut. And they're like, no, Lexi, charisma.
He's got Riz. He's rizzed out.
Okay, I'm old.
He's a Rizzler. Sounds like a Twizzler. Anyway.
He's got Riz.
Excellent. Yeah, so young women dating, be careful. Make sure that you're protecting yourself and your virtue and chastity in the midst of that. And one other thing I would say, when you're searching for a spouse and you are qualified to be married, like you're able to fulfill the duties of marriage, and a man that you discover, like that you enter a relationship, is he can fulfill the duties of marriage. There's no reason not to be married. I would also encourage folks to move reasonably quickly through courtship and not take forever, because a lengthy amount of time introduces other problems and temptations. Mm-hmm. And also, I think we can have too stretched out of a timeline with some of these things. Are you tired of Christian books that are shallow? For nearly 30 years, Founders Ministries has been publishing resources that encourage the recovery of the gospel and the reformation of local churches. With over 100 titles, there are books that address systematic, historical, pastoral, and practical theology. Whether you're looking for your kid's next board book or a larger theological work, you can find it at press.founders.org and use code HEARTH, that's all caps, HEARTH, for 10% off your order. Here at Bright Hearth, we're all about helping you not turn into a girl if you're a boy, or into a boy if you're a girl. You know what might be doing that to you? The soap in your shower. And so we are pleased to introduce you to IndigoSundrySoap.com, link in the description, of course. who can provide you with soaps and more without any of the nasty stuff. And because they love you, they're giving you a discount code, guys. So use code, all caps, Bright Hearth for 10% off your whole order. Support this great Christian company and support Bright Hearth Podcast at the same time. Check them out at indigosundrysoap.com. And of course, that link is in the description. Okay, let's move to another question here. This one is a pregnancy-related question, which actually, hang on. Let me do a quick one first, and then we'll get there. This one is for Lexy because I couldn't answer it. Could you tell us the title and author of the fiction book you've mentioned several times, Kristen's Daughter or something, please?
Title is Kristen Lavren's Daughter by Sigrid Undset.
Can you spell all of those words? This is why no one's able to find this book, because it's like Dutch or something.
Also, this could be why. I don't know, because I listened to it on audio. I've seen a couple of different editions.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you can buy them as 3 separate books or if it's always sold as one book. But if you just look up Kristen Lavren's Daughter, because I have gifted the book to people, you can buy it as one book. I know it's possible. But it's Kristin, Kristen, Lavransdatter.
Lavren's Daughter.
Yes. Sigrid is Sigrid, and Undset is Undset.
Excellent. We've gotten that question about 50 times.
That's really
so I was
funny.
like, we need to do it. Okay, and Lexy really likes that book. Apparently, it is amazing. I have not read it.
You should read it.
But I've heard
Talk
good
about
things.
marrying a fool.
That book is
like one
well.
long, painful look at what happens when you marry foolishly.
Excellent. Well, sounds like a good one. Okay, here's the next one. It says, hello, I am currently pregnant. My husband and I are having our first baby. We are having a really hard time knowing what is good nutritionally for me right now in pregnancy, since everyone on the internet seems to have their own opinion. Do you have any good resources for nutrition in pregnancy? And also, to what extent do you typically listen to like more conventional medical advice when pregnant? So pregnancy nutrition, and then like, hey, should I just go with what the American Medical Association says about pregnancy nutrition, pregnancy health, and all these things?
Well, okay.
And I'm sure there's some yes, some no, but what are you?
I
how
have
are you thinking
always,
about that?
even when I had OBs, I never told them I drank raw milk. So,
They would have been mad.
Okay, so I feel like there's a really big sway right now, a huge push towards like high calorie, high fat meals in pregnancy specifically, which I feel like can really do you in, because the reality is you only need between 200 and 450 extra calories a day. 450 in the third trimester, 200 the rest of the day.
You talking about the husband needs 250?
No,
400 extra?
no. Talking about the pregnant woman. So if you just do, and I'm not saying you can do really good quality fats. I do really good quality fats. But if you do them in excess without paying attention, you can gain a lot of weight in pregnancy that can make you miserable, and it can make it harder to deliver a baby. It can make for bigger babies, which bigger babies aren't in and of themselves a problem. It just does make things harder. It just is a reality that you can't get around. So that's something I am a little more wary of, is like, yes, let's go for all the farm fresh foods, but realize you don't need, until you're breastfeeding, you don't need an extra several thousands of calories a day. Okay. So I say that because it's really popular in the crunchy realm and most people are listening from a crunchy perspective. I really like, in terms of resources, I like to look to women who have done this a lot. They're not in their 20s and they have had more than 2 kids.
Yeah, that's so important. So,
because it really does change things. At least I noticed after once you get to your 3rd pregnancy, it's just totally different. So, I really like the Trim Healthy Mama gals. The part of why I've liked them is because they have allowed me to maintain a lot of food freedom while still gaining weight in pregnancy at a healthy rate instead of an unhealthy rate. Does that make sense?
Oh, totally.
So you can have your whole milk, heavy cream ice cream if you want, if you know how to eat it the right way. And it really is. And let's see, one of them has 5 kids. The other one has, I think she's had 10 children and has adopted 4. So they know how to do this is what I'm trying to say. And they're still thriving and they're still very physically fit and active, and they value hormone health and they value sex, which also just plays into how they're going to look at taking care of their bodies. So that's a resource I really like. Other than that, I guess I don't really eat a whole lot differently when I'm pregnant versus not pregnant. It's just more calorie intake when I'm nursing, but I don't change for specific pregnancy nutrition. Wouldn't you say?
Yeah, more or less.
Yeah.
You do, I think during pregnancy, you seem to focus more on being careful about not overeating, because sometimes discomfort.
Yes.
It's easy to make you want to just
much more easy to
eat all the time.
Yeah, and you can feel a lot worse.
And you can there's like an excuse of, oh, I'm pregnant, so I need more, but not being specific. Like, one of the best things you can do, this is true for pretty much all weight management in general, is track things. If you're writing down, or you're actually being intentional about how much of stuff am I eating, and just writing it. If you spend a week writing down everything you ate, I'm not even talking about pregnancy now. Most of us would be astonished.
Yeah.
And we'd go, I thought I was eating 2,000 calories a day. I was eating 3,800. And that's not hard to do.
I think the biggest change that I've made too is I don't let myself snack anymore unless I'm having at least 25 grams of protein in a snack.
To keep that satiation up.
Yes. And I think that's where a lot of pregnant women can go wrong, is they're like, oh, I'm hungry again. So they eat little bits, like it might be half of an apple and a cheese stick here, or like a couple of buttered dates there with a beef stick. And it never is keeping them full because they're not actually going for enough protein.
Yeah.
And that's when they can really overdo the calories. And I think the fat a lot of the times.
Yeah. Fat and sugar add up so much more quickly. They say that obesogenic foods, like foods
obesogenic, I've not heard that before.
It's a word that, like, especially if you're into the weightlifting scene where they're talking about like how to cut and how to do whatever.
Okay.
Obesogenic foods typically have 2 characteristics. I don't remember the technical terms for them, but they're pretty, like, word on the street is. One of them is that they are calorically dense, and the other is that they're extremely tasty, which sounds obvious.
Yeah.
But food like pasta or donuts are a good example. Mm-hmm. You can eat 1,000 calories of either of those things in a very small volume of food, and they taste so good. Pizza is like this too, that when you start eating it, your body's like, yes, this is great. It's amazing. I love it. It tastes good. Mm-hmm. You can easily eat 4,000, 2,000 calories of that in one plate. And so one of the things that helped me a lot recently, I'm veering off now because you actually can't use this pregnant. But a friend of mine on Twitter, or an acquaintance on Twitter, posted about this scale that he uses. It's called, I can't remember the name of it, but I'll put a link to the comments.
Isn't it called Hume?
Yeah, because they actually sent me I have like a code.
Oh.
A discount code, so I can get you $20 off this scale. It's not cheap. It's not like a $50 scale, but it uses medical grade body scanning technology, which is like electrical impedance through the body, to measure like 40 plus different things. So the most important to me are, it will tell me how many pounds of muscle I have on my body, where in my arms, legs, trunk, etc. How much fat I have, percentage, how much water, bone density. It tells you all these things. And then it just tracks it automatically when you use an app, and it automatically tracks it for you. And it's super helpful because in terms of nutrition and health, I found that this is true everywhere, but what you measure, you can alter. But what you don't measure, it's hard to alter.
Yeah. Actually, when I've never walked on the treadmill before. I have some weird inner ear things that happen to me.
Get dizzy. Genuinely.
I've been trying to do it more this pregnancy, and I'm actually glad because I saw how few calories you burn when you go for a mile walk.
Yeah.
I would have guessed several hundred. I don't know. I just would have guessed that. So it has genuinely made me more like, okay, I'm glad in some ways I have measurements now because it's not what I thought. The other thing, what I wanted to say too is my understanding, I'm sure there's more pros out there than me, but I have been pregnant 7 times. So
yeah,
after 35, you start to lose muscle mass, or before 35 if you're pregnant. So this is often why you feel worse after pregnancy, is because you have, especially if you have a hard pregnancy, and guys, I've been on bed rest before. I know what it's like to have morning sickness. I know you cannot maintain activity consistently through all of your trimesters of pregnancy, but if you can actively be pursuing keeping your muscle mass in pregnancy, then you will be able to gain your weight better and hold your weight better. Does that make sense? And come out on the other side stronger because you were fighting for that muscle mass the whole time instead of letting it go for 9 months.
Yeah, totally. Being prepared for the difficulty of pregnancy ahead of time is very important.
And nutrition wise, I would say, yes, I am pro like eat the steak, eat the liver, drink the raw milk, make the kefir, eat the raw cheese, have the butter, have the olive oil. So I would probably say, just thinking like of vitamins and minerals and stuff like that, I do probably still tend towards more of an ancestral diet, but I am much more comfortable having raw fruits and vegetables all year round probably than they would be. Just to make sure you're keeping your digestive system moving, you're actually using and absorbing that protein the right way.
What about the part of the question? It's like, how much of the broad mainstream pregnancy nutrition and pregnancy health stuff do you? Are you like everything the American Medical Association says? Like, take this vitamin pill, do this thing.
I actually haven't taken any supplements at all this pregnancy, including liver and stuff. No, I don't dabble in any of that unless I need to, unless I'm forced to. I think it's good. I think it's helpful to have, like, if you have a provider that you trust, they should be helping you figure this out nutritionally. You know, like there were some things that I was not doing and I was overlooking that my midwife was like, you really should consider this. And she was correct. And I felt better. But again, I'm not necessarily going for a mainstream provider. So.
No, and people are different too. This is something that we've discovered with medical situations and issues, is that people are different. Stages of life, their own, like what works really well for one person might not work great for you.
Yeah.
You might have, like with your blood pressure during pregnancy. And we've done different things. And it's not just that Lexy could say, like, this is what worked for to manage my blood pressure. And so that will work for everybody who might have this issue. A lot of the time you know your own symptoms and everything best. And so being an advocate for your, like, not depending on just, well, the doctor will tell me what to do. Because they're always, especially in the mainstream medical world, they're going to funnel you towards the easiest, get you in and out of an office, which is typically a medication, a prescription drug, something like that. Do this intervention and that'll check the box for these symptoms. They're not going to typically work really hard to try and help you. Oh, you know what? Well, this could be addressed with maybe this diet and this remedy, because there have been things that have worked well for you for blood pressure better than prescription medication, because we've done both things now.
Yeah.
So you have to be knowledgeable, seek out people who have a lot of experience. I think that's probably,
and this is
really
where
helpful.
I do think having Christians in both realms who are professionals. I think it's so helpful. Yes,
we need Christians who are in the medical industry, medical research industry, who are doctors and who are clinicians and doing and surgeons. And we need people who are in natural medicine, nutrition, fitness, like doing some of these things as well.
I was on the phone with my ICU friend today and my legit homeopath who's a Christian to figure stuff out in our family. And so I'm not just always pursuing one side. And but this is also part of where you have to know how medication works, because you have to know when to bring it in and when, if you're going to bring it in, it actually works versus harms. So, and I do think you just do need a little bit of medical literacy. This is why I think it's important to kind of just keep your hands in books or podcasts or something somehow.
Yeah.
So
Okay, next question. This is tangentially related. I thought it was funny
okay.
because I've actually thought about it a lot and put research into it. And we've talked about it a lot. This is it. It's relatable. My wife is concerned with my use of Bluetooth earbuds, the EMF stuff. I know y'all listen to tons of books. Do you use wired headphones? My excuse is how difficult it is to exercise with a wire coming out of my pocket and to listen to books while I exercise. Thank y'all. God bless. And I went down this rabbit hole because of this exact question. I use Bluetooth headphones most days, like when I go walk or when I'm working out or listening to an audiobook or falling asleep, listening to a podcast or something.
Had them wireless for a while. Then you had wired.
I switched back.
And then you had wireless. So you've tried them all. Yeah.
I will say that wireless headphones are one of my favorite inventions of mankind because of how much better they are genuinely than wired headphones. And I'm not talking about for audiophiles, like people who like to listen to the highest quality audio music or whatever. I just mean for general all-purpose listening. I remember when AirPods first came out, like the Apple whatever headphones, and it was like, this is the best product update of all time, to go from wires that are so annoying. You're constantly walking, like getting them caught and stuff, and they're getting ripped out and they break really easy. Lexi goes through a set of wired headphones about every week. Not really. She actually just keeps the broken ones until I'm like, you're going to get electrocuted. Let me get you another set of
But
headphones.
I did also say that by the time I go into labor, I would like to have a set
of wireless. Yeah. So here's my take on Bluetooth and Bluetooth technology, wireless stuff, and the EMF stuff related to like the headphones. So EMFs can be a problem. EMF radiation can be, which is just electromagnetic radiation, basically, that all electronics pretty much give off some amount of EMFs. They can be a problem, especially with really high amperage and high voltage stuff. Like if I were putting solar panels and batteries into my home.
Yeah, we talked about this.
I'm not saying I wouldn't do it. I would just route it a certain way to keep some of the high EMF portions of it, because part of the system, like the inverters, I believe it is, have a really high EMF. And those can cause measurable problems for humans being close to them. However, when it comes to radiation, we have to understand that we are constantly being bombarded with energy. Like, for example, I'm not even talking just about technology like Wi-Fi or cell tower radiation, which is far more powerful, by the way, cell tower radiation than EMS from headphones. The sun. The sun bombards the earth with an enormous amount of power and radiation. And it's genuinely, some of it's harmful. It can kill you. And if you're like the higher you go, if you spend a lot of time in airplanes, like pilots, they're 30,000 feet above the ground where the atmosphere is much thinner. It's much less shielding. They get much higher radiation than people who don't fly airplanes all the time. You can live in certain regions if there's a lot of basaltic rock or things like that, and they will have a background level of radiation that is higher than average. So when it comes to Bluetooth headphone radiation, it's an extremely low power emission. So we're talking very low power. Like if you just think about the physics of the question, a Bluetooth headphone has a tiny little battery in it. That's the amount of power that it has to run. For some of them run, 8 hours, 12 hours, 18 hours, 24 hours of playtime with like one charge in that tiny little battery. That tells you how little power it's drawing. It's not like a cell tower, like a 5G cell tower that is wired up to extremely high voltage. It's pulling a lot of power, and it's broadcasting a type of power that can be picked up for miles and extremely high. If you're close to a cell tower, I would actually be concerned about that. If they built a cell tower 100 feet from my house, I'd be very concerned about that. The type of radiation from Bluetooth headphones, because of how low power it is, it doesn't concern me. And also, even if it did, it would be very difficult to escape because of the world we live in. Yeah. Bluetooth signals reach.
That's one of the biggest reasons that kept us from doing any sort of shielding to our house was just how close you live to your neighbors, that it's kind of like
Yeah.
You spend all the money, but then you still have to deal with their issues that you can't stop. And you said something recently about like it, because of how pervasive the usage is, if it was really, we believe there are issues with this. Okay. We do. I promise. But it would, like, the cancer would be so much more obvious.
Yeah. In a great example of this actually is cell phones. If you talk on your cell phone held up next to your head, this genuinely has caused measurable increases in tumors.
This is why I only talk
brain tumors. Yeah, it's why I use Bluetooth headphones.
This is why I use speakerphone.
When I'm on a call too. I do the same thing, but just with Bluetooth headphones. Because there's measurable increases in cancer, and people have gotten tumors that are almost certainly caused by a lot of phone usage, because the signal from your cell phone doing a call is way higher powered than just a low power Bluetooth headphone type of frequency, or like your Bluetooth mouse at your computer. So that's why for me, I don't keep my phone. I'll put it on a desk away from me, or I will use headphones. I'm not on the phone enough that it like makes a huge difference anyway.
I put mine, and I've heard that this doesn't even matter anymore, but if I am going to listen to something, I'll put it on airplane mode. But I've heard even that doesn't matter. Like that there's ways that Apple got around that, and it's still a problem. So
yeah, there's all sorts of issues, but like, long story short is just when it comes to the headphone thing, I get it, because I was like freaking out going, if I'm putting this thing in my ears.
Yeah, inside of your,
But then I looked at the physics and the research, and it hasn't, like Lexi said, if Bluetooth headphones were causing tumors or like brain cancer, that kind of thing, we would be experiencing rates.
Yeah, and we try to opt out where we can. I mean, like the fertility thermometer that I have to wear overnight is no EMFs. You know, we really do try when we can, which is why it's kind of like, just don't sweat it at other times. Yep. And even I have a friend, she's very sensitive to this, more sensitive than I am. And she's done a lot of research, and, you know, they've done different types of shielding methods. And even she told me recently, they're finding out that a lot of the protective shielding is actually like making it worse and almost causing like a ricochet effect of what does get in.
Yeah.
And making it even worse. So there is something to be said for just like sunshine, fresh air, getting your feet on the bare ground, and just not sweating a lot of that stuff. Just letting your body, if you're doing the things that are free and healthy and natural, let your body work it out as you can. So.
Yeah. So EMFs, what I'm saying is you should go stand next to the power station for 8 hours a day. That's closest to you.
This is the man that uses the microwave for everything.
For everything. I microwave one thing every day. And I'm still alive. And I try to stand right in front of the microwave and put my face right.
It's a joke in our house, guys. This is a funny topic. We banter with each other about this all the time. So
excellent. Okay, let's keep rolling here. We got some more questions. Okay, this one is a marriage bed question. Good evening. Appropriate time of day to start the question with.
Good evening.
Seeing that y'all have several children, do you have any tips for navigating the 6-week dry spell during the postpartum period? I'm talking about the sexy times. Let the reader understand.
I don't want to answer this at all.
There are other ways we've thought to be intimate during the 6 weeks, but we're needing a couple of weeks. Oh, like so in this case, they're saying they've had setbacks that made it even longer.
Okay.
So there's, long story short, they're trying to just figure out how to navigate this time when you have to be recovering, and then some people, you can have complications that genuinely do mean, hey, you're actually more like 12 weeks, or there's some other thing that you need to. The first thing I will say on this, so they're like, what do we do? How do we remain connected and intimate and all of that, all of the purposes of that God made sex for. Now, the first thing I would say is that it's good to practice the virtue of chastity, even within marriage. Marriage does not mean that you are no longer chaste. Married people are not unchaste. Married people,
that's true.
Chastity is a virtue of self-control in your sexuality, and using the gift appropriately. So it also includes lots of self-control as a married person. You tell married people this all the time. It's hard if you're a virgin and you're 19 and you're about to get married, it's hard to believe when people tell you this. And I know you've heard it before, but like you're going to get married and you're not going to be freed all of a sudden from the need for all self-control and eliminated all temptation to genuine sexual sin. That's just not how the flesh works. The flesh wants to sin. And so even if you're engaging in normal marital relations, the flesh still wants to find ways to sin. So chastity is a virtue you still practice in marriage in other ways. There's going to be times, like for example, under the Mosaic law, there were many times when you were forbidden from having marital intimacy for various reasons.
True. God said that.
Yeah, cleanness. After childbirth, depending on the sex of the child, there would be a period where you were not permitted. There were all sorts of things. So one of the things to understand is that those limitations are a gift. They're fine. Like God he's not harming you. He's for you. And it's good to say, I am going to be kind to my wife and not act like I am incapable of chastity, of self-control, and of being kind to my wife. Because the other thing is, and we'll get to the other part of this question, but when you are a woman and you have given birth to a child, and it is difficult, and you are very tired, and it is a very trying season of life, it's not the optimal time for peak interest in sexual intimacy for a woman. That's okay. God designed it that way. She is most interested in sexual intimacy when she can get pregnant. God made her that way. So every month during normal life, every month is a beautiful ride of different, you are married to a different woman depending on what time of the month it is. And I don't just mean the one time of the month, but like she's wired.
You're not saying that in a negative way, is what?
No, I'm not saying it negatively, but physiologically she's wired to be like, I'm peak interested in intimacy with my husband when she's ovulating, of course, because God made her that way. Okay. So it's good for a husband, I think, first to say, my wife doesn't have to be at her peak interest in sexual intimacy when she is at one of her most tired times, most physically demanding times. She's recovering she needs rest and she genuinely needs to be able to ease back into the duties of life with grace. So I do think it's good to emphasize, instead of running right to, there are other things you can do, and there certainly are, it's good to start with the duty of chastity and
that's good,
of kindness to your wife as a man. Now, I'll say one more thing from a husband's perspective. It's also, when you're thinking about in terms of kindness, a wife should be putting forth effort to be interested in her husband and kind towards him, and not like, I'm tired and therefore I'm entitled to nobody putting any demands on me or to being easily annoyed by my husband. And I mean in general, not just sexually, but like, oh, I'm tired. I can snap at however much I want. I don't have to be pleasant.
I was up all night. You weren't.
Yeah, like making jabs.
How dare you want to snuggle and watch Netflix?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or starting to think like you're just interested in me because of all of a sudden, So kindness goes both ways. Kindness, consideration, treating the other person the way that you would want to be treated.
Yeah, so for the wife, it could be just believing charitably about your husband in that time.
Yeah.
Because it is a real temptation. You can start to feel distant from each other. So it is a real temptation for a wife to start assuming things.
Yes.
So
I do think it is good to say there are other forms of marital intimacy that are not dependent upon a normal rhythm of sexual intimacy, but it's also good to just say, to recognize that this is a relatively brief period of time in the scheme of things when it's good for everybody to grow in their self-control. Her growing in her self-control in terms of being kind in the midst of tiredness and being caring and considerate, and him being self-controlled and serving and not being demanding or not using it as a threat. You know, like, don't use a temptation as a threat. You know what I mean? Like, well, unless
That's
you figure
really gonna
something
turn her
out.
on.
Unless you figure something out, I'm going to go sin.
Oh my gosh.
Well, don't.
I can't.
You know what I mean? Like, that's a bad,
Okay.
that's a bad way of going about it. You know what I mean? So it goes, I have never encountered a married couple where the husband and the wife are both seeking to be kind to the other where there's a problem. I'll put it that way. It's not really our place to get really uber specific here about.
No, that's why I said
we're not going to be
answer
really
this.
specific. But you don't need us to be. People know. Be kind to each other. Connect. Love one another. Consider the needs and desires of the other. Like, those are just, it's good cast iron advice. Old fashioned grandma's cast iron pan type of advice. It will serve you forever. Attention business owners. Proverbs tells us, in the multitude of counselors, there is victory. At KeepWise Partners, we aim to apply this principle to your business as you work to build Christendom in your labors. Running a small business is challenging, but you don't have to go it alone. KeepWise Partners offers expert bookkeeping services with the care and integrity you'd expect from a partner who shares your values. And to take it a step further, our advisory services bring invaluable insights to you as you aim to meet your business goals. Visit keepwisepartners.com or call Derrick Taylor at 781-680-8000 to schedule a free consultation. KeepWise Partners, bringing finance and accounting excellence to the way you build your business. Are you tired of not feeling well and of having your doctor treat your symptoms without taking the time to investigate what's really going on? Rebecca Belch at Live Oak Integrative Health is here to help. Rebecca is passionate about helping women and families achieve the health that God designed in our bodies to have. With more than 20 years of experience as a critical care and labor and delivery nurse, she now serves as a licensed practitioner of functional medicine. Her goal is to address the root causes of dysfunction in your body and to help give your body what it needs so that you can create a legacy of health that extends to your children and grandchildren. She provides a wide range of testing options to uncover your underlying health issues, such as fatigue, weight gain, and gut problems. Then she works with you to develop a plan that focuses on nutrition, hormone balance, and long-term habits to promote enduring health. She also specializes in health for women who will become or currently are pregnant. This time is often overlooked and is the most important window to create generational health. Check out her website to book a free discovery call right now and get a $50 discount on any of her service options. You can do this on her website, liveoakintegrativehealth.com. Hey friends, let's talk about Gray Toad Tallow. They're a family-owned small business dedicated to making products that nourish your skin with the purest, most wholesome ingredients. For centuries, people have experienced the moisturizing and healing properties of tallow, and Gray Toad Tallow is committed to sharing these benefits their family has experienced with you. Besides their commitment to offering you a healthy skincare option for your family, Gray Toad Tallow's desire is to remain affordable and accessible to be a blessing to others. For more information and to try a balm sample pack, visit graytoadtallow.com. That link will be in the description along with this code, which we would urge you not to forget to use for 15% off your order. That code is all caps, BRIGHT15, BRIGHT15 for 15% off your order, and we truly appreciate your business. If you have a young family like me, you work hard every day to ensure you care for your wife and kids. Providing for a young family is challenging with rising costs. It doesn't look like things are going to change in the future. Maybe you've thought like I have, I wish I'd started investing years ago. My family would be in a better financial position. As they say about trees, the best time to plant a tree was 10 years ago. The second best time is today. Don't let the benefit of time go to waste on your financial planning for retirement or inheritance for your generations. Joe Garrissey with Backwards Planning Financial has been working with us to make the best plan for our family. He's a Christian who works with one of the largest and most trusted financial service companies in the world. He's been helping Lexi and I work towards our financial goals and helps us navigate the complexities of the markets. Whether you have millions in assets or you're just starting to invest, Joe Garrissey can help you reach your goals to grow the kingdom and leave a good legacy for your generations. Visit backwardsplanningfinancial.com. That's backwardsplanningfinancial.com. Or call 615-767-2555 to speak with Joe to prepare for the future. The testimonials presented may not be representative of the experience of other clients and are not a guarantee of future performance or success. Okay, cool.
Wait, but I do have a thought.
Oh, okay. You have a thought. Let's hear it.
Because there can be sometimes, when I don't know what the specific setback is. Mm-hmm. I can think of examples though where like there's been such injury that it's not that you can't return to normal marital intimacy. It's just genuinely harder and more confusing and frustrating to figure out. And so I think that's where a husband really can step up and take the lead in being patient and helping his wife, because the frustration or like the anticipation of frustration over that can make everything way, 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 way worse.
Yeah.
But there can be also genuine like physiological change and harm that happens that you also really need to navigate to understand, to be able to get back to a place of like joyful freedom, I guess. That's not.
Yeah. If you have an issue that is a genuine medical issue that's a hindrance, I would say treat that urgently. Like, figure out what needs to be done to return or to navigate a new normal, or figure out how to get that sorted with. That's not like something that you just let kind of, we'll figure it out eventually.
Yeah.
That's something you should be urgently attempting to figure out.
I think that's where I mean, like the husband can take the lead in so that it's not like a wife feeling, I'm not sure if I'm explaining this correctly.
Feeling
like she's letting him down if he's being patient, helping her work through it. Sometimes you really do need to have professional help. Maybe it might be your OB that you're like, something's not right. Something's not right. Or maybe you genuinely didn't take enough rest and like you caused the problem. And so, okay, this is a priority. That means the next 4 weeks, the schedule is cleared so I can heal for real, Yeah. So,
and these sorts of issues can arise in like when you're first married as well. You can discover issues that you weren't aware of.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
That happens. And so being proactive and assertive about figuring that problem out when you can is important, along with kindness and patience and working together. So good question. I know it's one a lot of people have. And my answer is probably not super satisfying to everybody, because it really is good to remember, hey, like you have, God really did build these. He's the one who permitted this rhythm to exist. So
take it up with him if you're,
Okay, I've got a question here. I don't actually know. I'm curious if you have any thoughts on this, but said, hi, Brian and Lexy. Have you all found any good biblical parenting resources for kids with autism? My husband and I often feel discouraged and lost trying to honor God in our parenting while not placing unrealistic expectations on our child. For reference, we have a high-functioning autistic 5-year-old as well as a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old. So I don't have any specific, I haven't looked deep into this question, but I thought maybe you had, and so I figured I'd bring it up. Is there anything?
Yeah, one of my really close friends, she used to be I don't know what she was technically considered, a clinical autism counselor.
Yeah.
Maybe. Is that what she was considered?
It was something like that, and she worked directly with autistic children.
And her and I have had a couple conversations about this over the last couple of years, but she's told me is like, as a Christian now, understanding the historic Christian worldview, she's had to unlearn a lot about autism. So I think that can make it even more confusing. We don't have an autistic child, but we have definitely had to navigate. I don't even want to say neurodivergence, because I don't I don't like that term, but we've definitely had learning differences in our family, and we have had some pretty severe neurological issues that we have dealt with. So not the same as autism, though a lot of the resources I have spent time reading do overlap with autism. So from a specific Christian perspective, I would say the jury is still out. Even most of the moms that I talked to that I really trusted, all the resources they gave me were directly from professionals and not specifically from a Christian perspective. So I think we know some people that have autistic children that are, I know different people on all ends of the spectrum with this that are solid Christians that I trust, multiple families. It really is kind of like a mystery to navigate. I think some of the helpful books that I learned from that would overlap, some of the helpful things that I heard early on was a woman who I really trusted what told me, like, you're to be the persistent widow for your child before the throne of Christ, and you're to be advocating for them in prayer. And so that was really so helpful for me when trying to figure out what was going on, who to trust, what diet to follow, what therapies to follow, where to spend our money, where to spend our time. That's a huge thing. I don't think people understand, the average family at church doesn't understand what it's like to have to navigate endless appointments for therapies for your kids. So that was so helpful to just have someone tell me, like, no, prayer is going to be your biggest tool in this time. And so really specifically the book, The Secret Key of Heaven, I just kind of read at that same time, and it was so helpful. But again, I think this is really where it can be really helpful to have Christian professionals that you know and trust. With autism, I would say if you can, find a Christian chiropractor who can navigate some of this with you. Whether or not they're a neurological chiropractor, find a Christian chiropractor, and they can help point you to good, solid other chiropractic resources, maybe outside of themselves. But I do think it's kind of a mystery because we don't fully understand the brain. And so I think Christians can quickly become judgmental of one another and kind of misunderstand what's going on in the body, because the body really is fearfully, wonderfully made. And when you start encountering these type of issues in your family, you realize, I have no clue how God put these bodies together. And they're so fearfully and wonderfully made, but also they are fragile. But the flip side of it is, what's that book, Brian? The yellow cover. You and I both read it last year.
Bad Therapy, Abigail Schreier.
Yeah, Bad Therapy. That book was really helpful because it also, not only was it like, it was like the total end of the opposite end of the spectrum of, like, your child is resilient. They can figure this out. They're better with this than without it, which was really helpful for me to hear. And just kind of helping you figure out what type of therapies might be harmful, what type of therapies are actually going to benefit them emotionally and sociologically in the long term. But yeah, I think this is where, like, boots on the ground mentorship, I think, is really, really important. But I don't know of an explicitly Christian resource tackling this topic. I would love to hear more about them. One of the most intriguing, and this was the resource that my friend and I were talking about, one of the most intriguing things I've heard of in the last couple of years is the Spellers documentary. You can look that up. I think it's spellersdocumentary.com. Del Bigtree and the Highwire has done quite a bit of work with autistic kids. And so that's where I've learned a lot of what I know about autism specifically from that. And also from Dr. Malilo's book, Disconnected Kids. That one covers dyslexia, but it also covers autism. So autism is one half of the brain, dyslexia is the other half of the brain. They're kind of flip sides of each other. So that book was incredibly helpful for me. You can find a neurological chiropractor who will work with you and do like an evaluation to show you where the brain's weaknesses are. And that was honestly, it was mind-blowing to watch what was happening. So these things are real. I don't think they're fake. I'm not one of those people. But I do think there's a lot of it that's just still new that we're learning as we just take an interest in God's world and learn stewardship in these different ways. So
Awesome.
Kind of a hard question to answer.
Yeah, it is. Excellent. Well, we got a couple more here. Next one would be,
I have to tuck a child into bed in a few minutes.
yeah, we're hitting the end here. Just a few more. Okay, how do you confront this is like mom, dad, siblings, family, basically family members outside of your immediate family, when they're going to, I'm going to summarize, they had some really specific stuff, but I'm just going to make it a little bit more broad because I think this does apply to a lot of people. How do you confront family members, parents, something like that, when they're attending a liberal or liberalizing church? And that could range from, some examples they give was like head pastor's a woman, or they have women preaching, LGBTQ inclusion. So there's a range of issues there. How do you deal with that? Like, what do you do? Do you have, ought you to do something? Like, what's the relationship there? I always tell people, when you're dealing up the chain of command, when it comes to inferiors and superiors. So in this situation, if it's your parents, you're an inferior in the relationship hierarchically in terms of rank. They outrank you is another way of putting it. And you have a duty to honor them in certain ways. That you don't have the same power in that relationship as you do, obviously, when you're the superior. So with my children, I have more power to say, is particularly when they're under my roof, you may not do this. Like, you can't, kids, you can't go to the hip church down the road with a lady pastor in the cool youth group program. Sorry. Like, it's not going to happen. You have more power. So power and responsibility go together. When you don't have a lack of power, does limit your responsibility in certain ways. So the way that I think about it is that let's say that your parents go to a church with lady pastors. I think you should talk to them about it directly and say, hey, this is contra-biblical. Here's the passage. It's very clear. The arguments that your church uses to justify this are the same types of arguments categorically that people use for for gay inclusion and that sort of thing. Like, well, there's no male nor female. There's blah, blah, blah. Okay, yeah, well, but that's how the liberals argue, and the entire church agreed on this until 5 minutes ago. So I think having a clear conversation, making it known that that's not permissible, and then depending on the severity of the issue, if it's like a total apostate church with gay ministers or whatever, then clear boundaries that would be appropriate when it comes to that type of church. Things like, I'm not going to attend that church. If I'm in town for Thanksgiving, I will not go there. My children will not go there. That sort of thing. I don't think that your parents attending a liberal church would demand that you, for example, what's the word? People, it's getting more and more popular for people to basically disown their parents. Like,
create, quote unquote, create boundaries.
Yeah, people.
Is that what you mean?
That's part of it, but it's growing more and more common for people to totally cut off all relationship with their parents, often surrounding like trauma. They were abusive, and sometimes that can be something that must happen, but it's becoming flippant and over like preferences. Like they wanted to let my child play with an iPad.
Okay.
And so I can't ever let my children go over to their house. Too much screen time.
Okay.
My brother or sister in Christ, calm down. Which is more important, honoring your father or mother or limiting your children's screen time? Let them have the iPad.
Yeah, it's true. Like, it's really silly, yeah.
I don't mean be irresponsible. Any content goes, whatever. But I do think it's possible to have a firm, strong, clear, convictional distinction that you've made clear to them, boundaries you yourself will not cross, while also honoring your parents, treating them kindly, and not basically cutting off contact with them or something like that, or making it, if you don't change this, then I will not speak to you.
Yeah.
Because you have a woman pastor or something.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, is if you have the conversation, you have to be able to follow up with being charitable towards them afterwards.
Yeah. And there are distinctions, like,
some of this, I think, depends on how much the parents or whoever it is brother and sister are forcing it into your life too. Because
Yes.
there's a difference with somebody who's constantly bringing it up, wanting to fight about it versus somebody that's, still kind, still charitable, still a good example in and of themselves. And yet you just have differences and you don't have to fight about it.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
A lot of parents might be kind of normies where they're like, oh, no, it's fine. Like, we're just being nice and kind. And it's really like just all about Jesus at our church. We're not really into that like patriarchy stuff. We're more like just, all about Jesus kind of thing. And we can understand that that's an absolute cop-out to the spirit of the age and disobedience to the scriptures. That really does matter. So I think having a clear conversation is important. And that there are lines where I would not consider a parent Christians.
Yeah.
That's another thing. So if the easy example is like an absolute gay-affirming church, full-on, and their membership in that church, I would not consider membership in the Christian church.
Yes.
I would, and I'd be clear with them. I do not consider you to be Christians.
Mm-hmm.
And you need to repent of this thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm going to honor you as any other Christian child would an unbelieving parent at that point. So I think that can also come into play. But we have to remember as well that in terms of how people change, kindness and mercy are persuasive.
Mm-hmm.
And that can be a firm kindness and a mercy that comes with mercy must clearly delineate sin and what it's being merciful towards.
Yeah.
But there is also a patience and long-suffering. God is slow to anger. He's abounding in steadfast love. He gave 400 years to the Canaanites before he judged them.
Yeah.
400 years of patience. So that's a lot of patience. 4 centuries is a long time to be patient with people who were sacrificing their children and all sorts of things. Mm-hmm. So that's not a super neat answer because a lot of situation dependent things
specific,
come into play. Okay, let's see. I think this is going to be the last one. Real straightforward. It's a question about nursing with children as they get older. I don't mean
babies?
Nursing older children, but when you're nursing.
Like feeding them?
Yeah. When you're nursing a baby, at what point does it become inappropriate to be uncovered in front of your children, your older children?
Oh.
Like what ages? I think this is a thing like that does matter that a mom needs to be cognizant of, like as her sons are getting up in age. But how are you thinking about that? Like what's a because the question they asked, it's a long one. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but because it's very specific to their situation.
Okay.
They're like, when our babies, if you cover them up, they get really sleepy really quick and they just don't want to
eat.
Like,
I've had those babies.
Yes. Some babies are like, oh, it's so nice and dark in here. Good night. And then they don't eat. And you're like, you're supposed to be awake.
Or the other babies you cover anyways, and they're so active that it's as if you're not covering
they kick it
at
off.
all.
They're like, no, get rid of this. I like the air. Let me see the sun, mother. I like to eat in the fields.
I had one boy like that.
Yeah. So there can be, we get it. We've had all of those. How are you thinking about, let's say specifically there, but just generally when it comes to modesty during breastfeeding? Let me just, while you're thinking, I have been preaching once. And I'm the only one facing the congregation. And all of a sudden, this was like 10 years ago. But I remember it because we were in the old building and I was preaching. I'm like 25. And I look out and all of a sudden there's this young woman who's just like, everything's
not
out.
Covered, yeah.
It's out. And the baby's go. And I was like, I'm going to now scan the room to the other side. And I'm going to not revisit that side of the room for some time. But it was a different method, let me just say, than our general approach has been historically. What do you think?
I think, yes, I'm trying to set the standard in my home that modesty is beautiful, but I'm also not scared that my boys know where milk comes from. So I wouldn't necessarily yes, as they get older, I am definitely more aware of this. Honestly, more so with the girls than the boys. And maybe it's because I don't know why. I think it's because the girls are like, oh, that's a female body. Oh, that's what those are for. Oh, I have those. That's what's running through my head more than the boys. So I don't know. Maybe I should be thinking about this differently. But
we don't have any post-pubescent boys.
No. Yeah.
Yet. I will preface this. They're getting close.
Yeah.
But they're not there yet.
But because I've kind of always had that standard of modesty and making sure it's beautiful, that's kind of how I've pursued nursing also. But I don't feel like I'm in sin if I'm in my room nursing my baby and the boy's walking on me or something. I'm not weird about it like that, I guess.
No, and I would say generally when we're talking about within our own home, but also like in terms of public nursing, there's parallel. There are ways to nurse that aren't in deploying a full cover that I think are still modest.
Yes.
Because come on, like there's a difference between I'm now going to basically take my entire upper clothing off.
Yes.
And everything's just as visible as possible. There's a difference between that and making available what needs to be available for a brief moment.
In a discreet way, yeah.
In a discreet moment, in a place that is not intentional. Like, there's a way. And then people do need to just be respectful of nursing women.
Yes, and I think that's probably part of it too for me is because it is normal. The boys just kind of know, oh, they're nursing, I'm going to go somewhere else.
Yeah.
So it's teaching both ways. It's teaching the mom how to set a standard of beautiful modesty, but it's also teaching the boys need to understand, like, this is part of womanhood. I'm not scared of it. You shouldn't be either, but also give a lady some space. Like if a nursing mom is over, it is normal to be like, okay, give her some space. I mean, I feel like they're old enough now that they understand that. But
yeah. And I would say certainly you need to be extra aware as a woman when there's other men or like non-family members or teenage boys. Just head it off. Just be helpful to them. And it's a part of respecting and loving your neighbor, of just recognizing that, man, sometimes it is inconvenient, but we don't exist for our own convenience.
No.
So saying sometimes it can be a cop out of like, let's be honest, it's not true that the only two choices I had were for my baby to go hungry,
yes,
or to be basically disrobed in front of, and they just shouldn't look.
Yes.
It's like, well, yeah, of course. Like you could literally walk out your front door completely nude, and it would still be everyone's responsibility.
Yes.
To not sin themselves.
No, and I think part of what I mean when I say teach your boys to give them space isn't give them space so they can take off whatever clothes they want. It's still because you don't know what the baby's going to do. The mom could be doing everything she tries, and the baby's just a wily baby down there.
And then someone walks in, and the baby goes,
yeah.
And they go, what's up? What's going on?
So
I got to get a look at this.
That's what I mean by that is like a mom can still be trying everything she can, but then there's also the unpredictable element of the little person involved.
It's another example of a thing where if everybody is being kind to one another, it's fine.
Yes.
And everybody has to give a little bit and have their own responsibility. It doesn't give anybody carte blanche to just blame everything on everybody else. So with your own children specifically, to be like as specific as I would, as clear as I can, I would say that when your sons are getting to the age of pubescence, like when they're going through puberty or close and then above that, that you should exercise additional care to be modest and discreet for their sake, to just avoid any. But also, if you have a lot of children in your home, by that time, your children are also going to be quite used to nursing as a thing. And it won't be like a transgressive thing.
No.
Right. And I remember like being a teenage boy, at no point in my life was there ever any kind of like disordered, weird thing with your own, like nature teaches us, and generally speaking, when it comes to your own mother, Freud is wrong. There's not this weird like. So I am actually much more concerned with this issue outside of the home than I would be inside of the home.
Which is why I said I don't think I would ever feel as a mom as if I were in sin.
Totally, especially at home. Like there's a big difference between a mother with her own children and now they've grown and they're like 12 and mom is nursing the baby discreetly in the on the couch, and it's not obviously over the top graphic or anything. It's just nursing a baby. There's a difference between that and being at a church function.
Correct.
And the 23-year-old young woman who has her first baby is quite openly nursing in front of a whole mixed group of company. That's a bad idea. You shouldn't be doing that.
No.
And honestly, in our world, if a young woman like did that sort of thing, one of the older ladies would simply go talk to her. Hey, honey, can I help you? Can I get
Let me cover you up. You must be cold.
Oh, you must not have seen all of the young
such an old
teenage
lady now.
boys.
I can't stand seeing a baby without socks on.
That's why I wear socks.
Socks on that baby.
That is such an old lady thing.
I know it is. I know.
say.
Believe me. I know, Brian. I know.
Old ladies are constantly fussing that people are going to be cold.
I know. I've always
Constantly.
had this fear, I feel like, though.
They're like, oh, put that coat on
Alfred
that kid.
Gets in the car and immediately takes his socks off. And I'm like, what are you doing?
He's like, I'm living my life, Mom.
I have to go put the kids in bed.
Yeah, it's time to roll. So, guys, thanks for listening in. Keep sending your questions in. If you haven't already, make sure you check out our upcoming conference we're doing in June. I know that's pretty far out, but plan ahead. June, I think 12th to the 14th, we're going to be doing all sorts of fun talks. We're going to have a lot of even more, like double the fellowship opportunities that we did last year. We're going to have a business mixer, a pastor's meal at one point. We're going to have a singles mixer that we've already had like 3 to 4 weddings or engagements out of. So praise God from last year and the year before. newchristianimpress.com/2025. And the conference is called Safety Third, Recovering the American Will to Greatness. And we're talking about recovering that spirit of risk-taking, the men and women who settled our nation, who explored the Western frontier, the age of exploration, some of that courage and moxie that made American Protestant Christian nation a thing. So join us there. We're going to have Dr. Stephen Wolf. We're going to have, I'm going to be speaking, doing a concert. Eric will be speaking as well. We will have J. Chase Davis and CJ Engel and Andrew Isker out to do some panels. We'll have a live Haunted Cosmos and more. So check it out. We would love to see all of you guys there. Lexi and I will both be there, Lord willing, obviously. And we are really, really looking forward to hanging out with everybody in Ogden again this coming June. So check that out. We'll have links in the description for everything. I think we mentioned like 5 things this episode. I'll put like for that one smart scale I use, I'll put a link. We've got conference coming up, and that's about it. So thanks for listening in, guys. We hope that the Lord is giving you a blessed start to your 2025 here in February, and we'll catch you next time on Bright Hearth.